Oh, iya, going to watch by. Nice, nice.
Keep foul. Must get ready.
Mm. No, no, I'm just excited for that news. I'm glad that because I know it's been a headline for the NFL that
Yep.
Tua he's gonna are they gonna give him or pay him that much money? He hasn't really, you know.
Yeah.
But I'm glad son done deal. Focus on football and get a championship.
Yep. And the thing is too is he's been going to practice even though they're doing all the negotiating and stuff. So that's a little unusual, right? Because typically when they're negotiating a huge contract like that, they'll skip
Mm.
practice. Skip practice.
Yes, and I don't get it. You know, some of these guys who get franchise tag, and they don't want it, and they don't show up, and then they don't. But franchise tag is not a bad thing because you still get paid a lot of money, but they want a contract. I just never got that negotiation strategy because I thought franchise tag at least you get that's guaranteed money that's gonna come to you. I don't know why guys wouldn't
It's
want that.
usually, yeah, it's driven by two things. It's to push pressure because they want to trade. Either they want to trade
Yeah.
or they want a max deal, right? And so they're thinking in their mind, I'm trying to put pressure on the team to
Have
let
it
me
do a
go to
deal.
another team. Yeah.
Oh,
And
uh,
that's the thing, because once you put the franchise tag, then they're protected. They can't go negotiate. They can't do whatever.
okay.
Um
Yeah.
that's why
Maybe
like
I'm just
some players hate the franchise tag thing.
yeah,
They're totally
yeah.
against it. So
I no, I guess for me when you're not making that multi-million-dollar contract, it's like oh sticker, that's already good money. Just go and do your trading and stuff. But I guess when you're making multiple contracts that you're trying to get as much as you want, I can okay.
mhm. Yeah, cause I mean, and that's why it was kind of interesting about Tua's strategy. I think he
It's
just
a
has a
good
really good relationship with the coach. He trusts the organization, and he's like, you know what? I know
mm,
they're gonna do what's right. They're gonna take care of me.
mm.
Hey, Clyde Moore, Malo,
Oh, Clyde
welcome.
Moore.
Welcome to the digital Kava session.
Mm.
We have a fun one for everyone tonight. We'll give everybody a couple more minutes. Oh, I also need to finish one more thing on Instagram Live. I have to hit the go live button.
Yeah.
There we go. I think sorry to everyone that I announced Instagram was live on our last digital Kava session. Wasn't until the end of the session that I realized I never hit the go live button on
Oh,
Instagram.
is that the only one of the platform
That's
you
the
have to?
only one. Yeah, that's
Okay,
well,
everything's
that
all
there's
good.
that one. Patreon. That's the thing. When I do it on Patreon, it automatically will start.
Counts.
Will automatically go. It'll wait for us. But for whatever reason, Instagram waits for me to click
Mm.
live here, and then I have to go back and click live on Instagram. So, but
Right.
yeah, it was kind of cool to see Tua still go to practice. The team didn't lose anything. Had full practice with their starting quarterback. Still had the negotiations go on. Tua still got his big payday, 200 mil,
50, yeah,
right?
51 million a year.
Yeah.
Jeez. Welcome to America.
No, and the
Jeez.
thing, yep. And what's crazy is he's the most accurate quarterback in the NFL right
That's
now.
his strength. That's his strength.
And
Definitely.
yep. And I remember when some of my St. Louis buddies were messaging me and saying, "Hey man, there's this. This is like maybe Mariota's senior year,
When he
right?"
was like a freshman or something or
Yes, and they're
intermediate.
like,
Yeah.
they're all, everybody was talking up Mariota, and some of my buddies were like, "Dude, there's this other kid right behind Mariota that's like Mariota, but even more accurate." And in high school he could run, because
Yeah.
the size difference. Obviously once he got to college and the NFL, then the size difference is too big, right? Then the injuries start happening. But saw a couple videos of Tua while still in high school, and I was like, "Oh yeah, way."
No, and I remember too because he lost to Kahuku in the state championship when he was a junior, and then
Yeah,
the
his junior
senior
year.
he just teared it up.
Dominate him. Yeah. Yo, hey, ay po Nacho. One for
Ooh,
Nacho,
ooh,
please.
ooh,
Mahalo.
ooh.
Yo. So welcome, welcome. Sweet. This is what we're gonna do. We'll give everybody 2 more minutes.
Mm.
We're gonna start today's program. We're gonna focus on the Tui Manua empire or concept here in Samoa. We're gonna look at the mounds. Oh, dude, Clyde Moore. Yes, the grok was awesome, and actually, grok was very helpful for the content for today. It was a
Mm.
video. I asked grok, let's dig deep into the Tui Manua and some videos on it, and this is one of the videos that grok found for us, and we're gonna walk through it today.
Mm. Yeah,
So
the
with I
Gronk.
think, yeah, Malo cousin Elon.
Yeah.
All right, I think we're ready, Masi. We'll get it rolling. So let me start our intros and then we'll get started. Welcome everyone to another live Kava session on the Polynesian Eyes podcast. We're here, Tua and Mr. Atearoa, all the way from New Zealand. Really exciting news today for the sports Polynesian community. Tua Tangavailoa got the $200 million payday, 51 plus, was it 53? 53 million a
Something like
year.
that. A
Yeah.
year.
So pretty exciting news for Polynesian sports. What are your thoughts on Tua Man's payday, Masi?
Nah, happy for the guy, and I mean it's the reason why I kind of cheer for looking for specifically the Tongan Samoan players when they're on the NFL teams because I know when they do well, they get a big paycheck, and all it does is help improve their lives and their whole community because it's always a big following for those Polynesian athletes. So not happy for him. 50 million plus, and because he's in the state of Florida, there's no state tax. He gets more of his money instead of going to,
Yes.
you know, Uncle USA tax department. So happy for him, and hopefully he does well with his first team that he was drafted to with Miami Dolphins.
No, and
So
that's a good point, man. Florida is no income tax, so he saved himself
correct.
a couple $1,000,000 right there. One of the reasons why I love living in Texas is that exact reason. No income tax, no state income tax.
Mm.
So maarah
Well,
yarbito.
and another thing too, it's I don't think they probably maybe some athletes have say it a little bit louder or not, but like there's some athletes when it makes a difference which team or states they're gonna play in because I know it helps with how much they're gonna get in return and which tax. So Florida and Texas are very attractive, and I know some of the NBA players, there's been talks that a lot of them don't want to play in Toronto,
Yeah.
Canada, because the
Yes.
tax is so high on their salaries. These are multi-million dollar salaries that goes to the Canadian government. And a lot of them want to play in the US because it's less tax. So
No,
it's interesting.
100%. I saw Tyreek Hill make that same comment either on Twitter where he's like, "Hey, on this deal because I'm in Florida, um that gives me like a 4 or 5 million dollar savings."
Mm.
So we got a couple comments here. Hey, Tevia Malo, appreciate
Hey,
it, man.
what's up, Tevia? Man.
Yes,
Opa to Tevia and the family, total family.
100%. Hey, Brown Monk, welcome, welcome. We did see
Oh,
that
Monk.
email. Brown Monk sent us some heavy reading, Masi. I
Oh
skimmed
yeah,
through the PDF. I was like, oh, yeah, way.
Mashi. Oh, hey, Brown Monk,
Eh,
telling us to go back to school, eh?
I know, brown monk. Usually when we have something, you go to the gym, you start with like the 135. Instead we
Maria.
go in brown monk, warm up on the 315. 315, the three plates. I was like, oh yeah,
Hey,
malo, malo.
Maria.
Yes, 100%. Clyde Moore. Uncle Sam. All he wants is the piece of the pie, and he never spends it well.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, malo, malo, Shione. Shione
Texas
actually is
boy.
in Texas. He's definitely we're big Texas fans, and hopefully Shione will join us. We'd like to do an interview with Shione. He's been
Maria.
traveling the last few weeks, but
San Antonio. Where's Johnny at?
he's in the Dallas
Oh,
Fort
Dallas
Worth
area.
area. He's
Yeah,
in Little Tonga, that HEB,
that
Euless.
is.
You
Yes, that is
know,
the Tongan area in
yep,
Texas.
100%. Yep, Clay Thompson's gonna reap the benefits as well, signing his deal in Dallas. And so, he's especially Clay Thompson coming from the Bay Area, he's gonna feel a big
Ooh,
difference. Big difference.
ooh, yeah, yeah.
Oh Yahweh. What a bears. How did you get your visa to join us today? I thought you were in the doghouse.
Hey, Waterbergs, just tell us the truth. Your wife told you to put that. Your partner told you to put that. I know that's not you, Waterbergs.
100%, 100%. Well, we're pretty excited for today. As we mentioned, we're gonna go through a video that Grok shared with us on, some of the major points to say on the Tui Manua, and also some of the concepts and history in Samoa. So we did go through this video. It's a 2 hour long video, so I did spend some time to try and
Okay.
find some bookmarks. So
Mm,
we're gonna listen to some clips, some very interesting things for conversations. So with that being said, Masi, I have while I pull this up, I
yeah.
did skim through. Man, we've been flooded on TikTok and on YouTube with comments. Haven't
Hmm.
been able. I spent like 25 minutes today
Yeah.
trying to respond to some of the TikToks, but I did see some of the comments. When we walk through um, the Tuimanua title,
Correct.
that let me see here real quick.
On our previous episodes, right?
One of
We
our
kind of.
previous episodes, there was some criticism that was a Palangi's list. Um,
Okay. Okay. Hey, no, and that's what was.
yeah,
That's only what we have. So yeah, if there was another list. Hey, we're open to it.
exactly. That's the one we could find, and that's here's the other thing. We appreciate the lists, but just like one of our bossos from Fiji, we were like, we never seen a pulotu list, and homeboy came up
Oh wow.
with like a list that's 100 names. So we better be careful.
Hey, at least, and I'm happy for that pozo there because at least he brought names and he said, okay, we can start from there, but then we'll dissect to it, and that's the cool thing about the Polynesian Eyes podcast too. We have the groundbreaking news for the first Tuipulotu list. Oh what? Eh?
Oh, Yahweh,
Eh?
man, that's a good point. We're gonna be the first ones to reveal the Tuipulotu list.
Oh
So
what? Oh
on a
what?
future episode, we're gonna do the
Maria.
groundbreaking.
Hmm.
Again, you guys can discuss that in the physical Kava session, but tell them, guys, I got this new data from the digital Kava session, the Polynesian Ice podcast.
Let's go. Let's go. Let's go.
Yeah, a couple more. Welcome everybody that's joining in. I appreciate it. So here's the first video, and as I mentioned here, I forgot the professor's name. Oh, Albert. We can just open it up here. So this. Oh, I covered his name, his face. But let me see if I can get rid of that for just a second. Maybe we'll just there we go.
Okay. Hmm.
For his sake, we'll lose some
Yeah.
we'll
Deal.
lose some branding.
Yeah.
We'll lose some branding opportunities to help out Uso here. Um,
Yeah.
but this is a professor. He did some studies in Samoa on the mounds that they found there. And then he just kind of walks through some of the discussions. So we'll just listen and then have some
Mm,
discussion and go from there.
mm,
All right.
Firstly, is around the kind of the puzzle around, or the some kind of misunderstanding or understanding around why mounds, these the build-up platform, existed in Samoa.
Alors là, vous avez une image de l'archipel des îles Samoa. Bien sûr, aujourd'hui, connaissant qu'il y a deux
Yeah, they
Samoa,
do
une
some
Samoa
translation.
indépendante et une Samoa américaine.
So
Et là, par contre, ils ont
we'll
partagent
suffer
tous la
through the
même chose,
French
des monticules,
translation here for a little
des
bit.
plateformes construites, qui ont été construites par l'humain, où
it's
se trouvaient bien sûr
so
les sites
cool
sacrés.
because
Et là, nous allons...
we're in the Olympics is in France.
Yes. And I guess there's a lot of controversy on the opening ceremonies.
Oh, I didn't watch it because we're
Oh
like,
yeah, you know, a bearded
Or there
female.
are around over 100 of these structures, from a very large structure, which I will talk about here, but also there are many numerous ones in Savai'i, especially Upolu. There are a lot in Upolu, the island of Manono, and then American Samoa in Manua and Tutuila.
I was going to pause it right there because one of the things that I thought was interesting, if I remember correctly, so basically he's saying there's hundreds of mounds, right? Over 100 mounds, which, okay, that's interesting. That's good.
yeah,
How many mounds are in Tonga when they do the scans?
thousands,
Tens of thousands.
tens of thousands.
So
Correct.
just to kind of give there, so there is significance. We do take the position that mound building is an important kind of identifier of the Polynesian Empire. But just to kind of give a comparison of the scale, in Tonga it's tens of thousands. In Samoa, it's over 100, and the majority of them are the star mounds.
Correct.
Right? He mentions a couple large ones, but what stuck out to me, Mussy, is he said it's predominantly on Upolu. Who typically spends the majority of his time in Upolu? The Tuitonga. Isn't that where the Tuitonga spent a lot of his time?
Correct. In the Upolu, but there's also some stories that the Tuitonga would spend its time in Savai'i too.
In Savai'i.
Yes.
So yeah, so that's kind of interesting.
Yes. No, and I was gonna add on to it's interesting he said Upolu because maybe it's not as it hasn't been reserved or lasted in a long time, but I haven't heard any of the star mounds that are been in Upolu. I've only heard the ones that's currently been talked about now in the village of Palauli in Savai'i, where their star mounts are at. So yeah, it's interesting. I would like to maybe are they gonna go through some of the videos in Upolu, or is it just the one in Savai'i?
So that Pule Malay is primarily he's going to talk about that's in Savai'i. He seems to really focus a lot on the star mounds in Manono, that little island right there.
Okay.
He seems to talk about that island is just covered, which I wonder if that's like a little habitat maybe for pigeons, maybe why they did, because we kind of have that. This guy has a different perspective on the star mounds. He does a different interpretation on it. But yeah, yes, Tuaholo, this is that right there, that Pule Malay mound. They'll eventually dig into it. And they do talk about that Temple Brown Monk. So we're gonna go to, I believe I'm gonna go to the next bookmark.
Segment.
Yeah.
Bookmark.
So 1701. You know what? I did this out of order. I apologize because this is 16. I wanted to go 16 and 17. All right, let's try this one. And see. Maybe this was more of the intro.
Over 100 of these structures, from a very large structure, which I will talk about here, but also there are many numerous ones in Savai'i.
Oh, this is the one we already watched.
Mm.
So we'll get that one, delete that one so I don't get confused.
Nice, nice, interesting. Yeah, that's all. I was kind of while you try and get the next one, though. That's all I was just thinking. I've never seen any of the Star Mountain because I've been to Polu, been to Tuila. I didn't see any. I have heard of the Pulimede when I was in Samoa in 2010 to 2012 in Savai'i, and I did hear of that, and that was predominantly the most kind of excavation that was happening. So that is interesting. Manono's another island. So the Manono Island is between Upolu and
Right
Savai'i.
here. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that is interesting. Interesting to see those things. Star mounts. Put him in a
Yeah.
Oh, Tua, are you? I'm not hearing it.
You're not hearing it?
Yeah.
Okay. It said the browser lost connection. Let's do. I'm going to close everything. This is the beauties of the live session, eh?
Yeah. Yeah.
Technical difficulties. Anyways, in the meantime,
Hmm.
let's look at some of the comments here. Really, I'm not aware of that. Nacho, that there's a lot of songs in
No.
the town that mention that.
No. And Nacho, I think it was one of our other viewers also mentioned that Taufahau would go to Manono for some stuff. So maybe Manono has tied to us, maybe to Ha'apai and like the Tuigang Polo, because a lot of their people come from Manono and Polo. But I don't know. Maybe could be that's why we're not too familiar to with it.
Mm, okay. Let me see. Let me open this up.
Because apparently Manono, there's a place called one of our viewers mentioned that there's a place in a village called Apai, kind of named after Ha'apai in Manono and stuff. So yeah, in their stories, apparently Taufahau went to Manono. So that's all. Yeah, that's all I kind of know about Manono.
Okay. Looks like I had this a little bit backwards, but hopefully we'll get this right this time.
Hey, no worries, no worries.
Share screen. All right. Let me know if you don't hear the sound again, Mas.
Which I will talk about
Oh,
here.
funny, oh my.
Also, there are many numerous ones in Savai'i, especially Upolu. There are a lot in Upolu, the island of Manono, and then American Samoa in Manua and Tutuila.
Hmm. Alors, on va se focaliser sur des structures qui sont très grandes.
And that's the one we just watched, Edua.
Yes, that's the one we just watched. Let's
And
come here.
yeah,
Go
no,
ahead.
and you go ahead. Go ahead. No, I was gonna just say I'll be interested where exactly it's concentrated in Upolu and Tutuila. I would like to know if it's concentrated like in a certain area or region, or if it's kind of like everywhere. So that's kind of my question I would ask.
Yeah, I'm not sure. He may get into it later on, but that doesn't come across my mind right now
Mm.
at this time. But we'll see. We'll see what's going on here.
On va voir ça ensemble. Il y a aussi qui sont pas aussi grands, mais
Most place in Samoa, which is in Savai'i, which is the place in Falealupo where the sun sets, and it's the one of these sacred places where the ancestors or the very high-ranked chiefs, when they die, their spirits will travel to this point, and from there walk beneath the ocean towards Pulotu.
Alors,
So once again, this discussion about Fiji being Pulotu,
Yeah.
right? And we take the position that Pulotu is a spirit world, like he mentions here, and that
Mm,
it's not a physical location; it's a spirit realm,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And
yeah.
the reason why throughout Polynesia Pulotu is always to the west is tied to what the
The
professor
sun.
was saying is
Mm,
that's where the sun sets,
mhm,
right? And where the sun sets, that's where the end of life is.
mhm,
So
mhm.
that's why our ancestors always referenced Pulotu to the west. Of
Correct.
course, there are PhDs who are out in Fiji right now trying to find Pulotu. So we wish them
Good
the
luck.
best of luck, but
Correct.
I don't think that they will be very successful.
Mm.
I'm going to open a couple of these links again, and I'm wondering. Okay, any comments on that, Masi, for the next few?
No, just no, just agree with you. Pulotu is a spiritual location where the spirit dwells. That's that's kind of where I stand on that. With Pulotu, it's not a physical location here. Um, people isn't there other philosophies out there or philosophers out there that think Pulotu is where kind of the start of the Polynesia kind of thing, but yeah, I don't
Yeah,
know. Yeah, I don't know about that one, but yeah, just
yeah. I
my
just
thought
think
on
it's
that.
hilarious that's people out there looking
Hmm.
for Pulotu. I was
Yeah,
just like, okay, let me know how that goes for you. So now
yeah.
he's going to start talking about the Pule Malay Mound.
Mm,
three three dimensional model that was made by Tuputau Ulu and his students here in Auckland. And it shows you, and there's, I think we've got a number of slides so you can see the extent of how large the structure is. It's
mm,
normally overgrown, and currently it's quite overgrown. So every time people go there, an excavation go there, and they clear the
mhm.
mound, within months, the whole structure is covered over.
Mhm. Alors ça, c'est une
Are these mounds? I want to see if I can find some pictures. Is this like small stones that are just stacked on each
Stack.
other?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And there's
From what I see,
no like cement or anything that holds it together or anything. It's just
I don't think. Yeah, it's just a bunch of stones that have been stacked together. From what I've seen on the, you know, on the real photos of the mound. Um, yeah,
okay.
but it's interesting.
Mm. No,
I'm
go
interested
ahead.
in this. No, I'm interested in this. In the Rafiti is his name.
Hmm.
Rafiti. In his what's his understanding of the and the purpose of the mounds? Because
Yes, he's going to get
there's
into it.
yeah,
He says that it's a temple.
a temple. Okay.
Yes, he says that it's a temple that is at the top because they've confirmed that there was a structure.
Okay. Okay, that's interesting.
I'm trying to see if I can find a good picture of the
Food in
of
Malay.
yes.
Mm.
Trying to see if I can find something here to share. Let's share this tab, see if we can find a picture. It says there's a picture photograph of one of the Pule Malay. It looks like just a bunch of stones stacked on top of each other's.
Yeah.
And this is actually a graph that he uses later on. Oh, there we go.
Mm. See a bunch of stones all put
Yeah,
together.
really interesting.
Mm.
I mean, one would think that that would like fall apart if they're just stacked to each other, if they're smaller
Mm.
stones and not
Mm.
held together by something.
Mm. Either that or they've been there's just been so many stones stacked together.
Interesting. Very, very interesting.
Hmm. So now I've heard people provide their their kind of theory of what these structures were for. So now I know this guy's probably leaning more of a religious aspect of the
Correct.
Pulimede mounds, and then I've heard of the pigeons. I've heard of the
Yeah.
pigeons, and then there's other ones that are still trying to understand. So interesting.
Yeah. So yeah, he'll get into it a little bit later on some of the timelines there, AJ, and we might get into a conversation of, well, who built what, right?
Mm.
Just kind of looking at the timing. Another comment here saying it's very similar to the Fort in Uvea, that it's kind of
It does,
same structure, kind of
with
like
bunch of
same build.
stones, bunch of stones stacking up and put together.
And I guess David here is saying that very similar mounds as well. Oh, by the way, David, you caused quite a stir. We edited one of our videos, put it on TikTok, where you were talking about the study that they did on the weathering of the stone on the Ha'amonga and how it could be tens of thousands of years old. You caused quite a storm there, David. But yeah, let's continue here and see where it goes.
Roughly to north to south. So the south is towards the sea, the north is towards the hilly, the big hill at the top, and then the eastern part to the west part, that is around 65 meters in length, and
It's
from
pretty
north
big.
to south is around 60 meters in length.
Okay.
So I mean, this is a pretty large structure,
Of stones and the amount of work to put all
the
that there.
labor. Yeah. So very, very interesting there. I'll jump to another bookmark that I did on it. This is the same on that website that we looked up.
Yep.
That had that same figure here, but he kind of walks through it and talks
And
about
that
it.
is a plan drawn up in the late 1970s of the ruins, and there are post holes on top of the mound that would have indicated there would have been some sort of shelter or some sort of house. What form it was, we have no idea.
Alors là, vous avez un plan du site. Au milieu, c'est le monticule, et au sommet.
A kilometer.
Hey, with Priceline VIP Family, you can unlock deals 5 times faster. You don't even have to be an actual family.
At some point, we're gonna have to.
Hey, physically, it's clear that I'm the dad.
Get a sponsor, maybe,
Hmm.
so we can get out of the free version. Yeah, so yeah, they're saying that there is a
structure
that was at the top.
As you can see, there are in the areas in dark there, they indicate what it is now called star mounds. So while the Pulimele, it's the grand big mound with a kind of a rectilinear shape, the star mounds are quite different.
So so this is the Manono Island and the star mounds.
Yeah.
The Pulimele is like kind of like a square rectangular built, and I didn't realize, and he'll go into it maybe later on. I don't know if I clipped it, but these star mounds, you're lucky to call it a mound. It's like only like a foot and a half off the ground.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they're not very tall, and he'll get into it later on in some of the other videos. But when I hear like the star mounds, I'm thinking at least like 4 or 5 feet off the ground. But
Pulimede seems to be what we're kind of thinking.
Yes. So let's go to the next one here. He goes into a little bit more detail on like the different shapes of the star mounds.
What does Pulimele mean?
Pule is the word for ruler. Malay,
Mm.
Malay
Trap.
can mean a swirling of things.
Oh yeah, swirling like a trap. Is that what you would think,
we
Masi?
actually
Yeah, yeah.
gave it the name Pule Malay,
Mhm.
and what it really means. That's the information. That's why it's very difficult, because there are no legends or oral stories from the local community to. So a lot of this material, we have to do a lot of comparison with other places in the Pacific that have similar kind of structures. So because there are some stories, but they vary quite a lot.
The word ake in Hawaiian refers to the tentacle of the octopus.
Yes, same. It's the same. Yes.
Same. Okay. Thank you.
So what I thought was interesting here is, they call it tia, but obviously it's like in Tongan it's a sia. It seems like
Wow.
the T and the S's between Tongan and Samoan, they do change quite a bit. Looks like a couple more comments before we get too far.
All right.
Nacho says Pule Malay sounds Tongan. Possible. Tongan Samoan are pretty similar. What if the whole time is just a foundation for a Whareha Moa? Well, it seems like it was. I mean, they had a structure at the top where it had posts. And then looks like Brown Monk has another book for here. A book on one of the ships that left the Americas the same time as Polynesians and sailed to Taiwan and then the Philippines. Interesting. It'd be interesting to see what because the Americas are known for kingships.
Yeah.
So, what lies? Toahola is not happy with what's being shared here. He is sharing that the Pule Malay is a direct translation from English, meaning pyramid. Is that what's the Samoan word for pyramid? Are you familiar with that word, Masi?
No, I'm not familiar. What would be the Samoanization of pyramid?
Yeah, give us more context on that, Toahola. Maybe we can have a more discussion. Hey, Alex, welcome back, just in time for a nice bucket.
Hello, Nicolo.
Oh, that's okay. So that's like a pirimiti. You're just saying that's what Pule Malay could possibly be, like a Tong. That's the Tongan version, right? Pirimiti or pirimeti. So maybe that's the Samoan version. Maybe I don't know.
Maybe I'm thinking like a Samoan be like Parameta or something. I don't know.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I don't know. Yeah. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like they're having a hard time trying to get the locals to express it. And I swear I need to find the video, but I swear I saw a YouTube video where they were interviewing a Samoan lady and she directly straight up says it was built for the Tongans. So I'm hoping I tried to go through my history like 3 or 4 months ago to try and find it, and I couldn't find it, but I'll keep a look for it. I'll keep an eye out for it.
Okay.
Let's see. Go to let me open up. Looks like we ran out of these threads here. I got too many YouTube windows open here. I've got to make sure I don't get confused. It's Friday, guys. My brain is fried. It's been a long week.
Wow.
Man, did I copy and paste the same thing multiple times? Vaya, Vito.
It's interesting. So, and I'm assuming the star mounds are just a bunch of rocks too, stacked with each other. Like there's no movement of like soil or anything. That's just me. I'm just kind of.
This is a picture of it, and like I said, it's not very high. These are those star mounds.
Okay.
Right? Like it doesn't.
It's almost
even,
like one stack of rocks kind of going around.
Maybe two. Looks like one, max two. So this is the thing that surprised me. You know, I hear like, oh man, there's thousands of star mounds, and then I'm like, I don't know if I would call that a mound. I mean, I don't know.
Mm.
Maybe 4 or 5 year old slide to show the state of what they look like. As you can see quite clearly, it's roughly around 400, 500 meters, millimeters, sorry, half a meter high off the ground. So they're not very high.
Comme vous voyez sur cette image,
So they're not very big.
No.
I mean, I wonder. I mean, it kind of begs the question: what could have they been used for?
See, stuff like that, Tua, makes me feel like it's more of either a game or something to snare, like to catch something. That's what I'm thinking,
Mhm.
because that's something that you can easily, like one leap. You're literally just from the normal level ground. You're just putting your like your manga, like you're kind of just leaping over. It's easy to go up, come down, and I feel like it could be something to catch. I don't know. That's what I'm thinking. I don't know. I could be wrong, but
That's the thing. I mean, we have to.
see, and
Yeah.
the Purimere, that seems like, see, that's interesting. That seems like could be some tied to maybe more significant stuff because you're talking about a bunch of rocks stacked together. We're talking a lot of rocks, and it's not. It looks like it's a difficult place to even just to get to the top. So interesting. That's just kind of my thoughts there.
Yeah. Let's see. Don't want to get too far behind on the comments here. It was told to me by other Samoans that's how they used to say pyramid, which means they don't really know what they were.
No, and Toahola, he, even the professor even says they're still trying to even figure it out. He's just probably giving his good, whack at this thing because no one really knows what the purpose of these structures were even built. And that's the thing. I don't know what's the so if the star mounds are called these, it's kind of hard to say Purimere for all of them because it seems like the Purimere is for the ones in Savai, in that village
Mhm.
Palauri, which is significantly bigger. And it's you can kind of say that was for something. So hey, Toahola is probably, right. They're still trying to figure it out and they're just probably throwing ideas. Nothing is sure.
Yeah, Tevita here saying that has strong ties to Tonga. The Tuitonga fled there after the war. Apparently, that's where the Hatufunga are from. Tongans will send boats there to get fixed. He does talk a little bit about the Tufungas in there when he talks about when the Tangaloa arrived. So kind of interesting. We'll get into it. Nacho said maybe the Pulemele rocks was Tarifaki for the Umu. That's one big Umu right there. You
Hey, I
know?
mean, and the thing about Samoa, they're one of the, I think they're the only ones that even today that they don't even dig a hole because their rocks are so good. You can just do a umu just on top, and you just get a bunch of leaves and cover. So hey, Nacho is probably
Maybe
onto
onto
something.
something. Kataki Nacho. I was thinking you were being sarcastic, but Mussy is confirming there's some scientific truth to what you just said. Oh yeah. Let's come back here. Share this tab. I'm afraid, guys, that I copy and pasted the same video over and over. I'm hoping that's not the case. We will find out.
From archaeological accounts in the material that is found, it says that some Samoans, people that settled Samoans, arrived 2,700 years ago in the area of Samoa, Tonga. Fiji was obviously settled before that. And within a 1,000-year, 800 to 1,000-year period, there is also then evidence in biological archaeology of a different strand of DNA genetic makeup arrived in Samoa. And we think currently that second arrival was when the Tangaloa clan arrived in Samoa.
So, if I understand correctly, what he's saying is 2,700 years ago, from their calculations, the Samoan Islands were settled. And he seems to be referencing the Lapita pottery, which,
That okay? That seems to
yeah.
be their studies. Okay.
Yes, around that time. And, the oldest ones are found in Tonga 3,000 plus years ago. So it seems that's where he's kind of heading to. What I don't know is he saying within 1,000 years of the settling of Samoa, a new genetic marker arrives in Samoa, and they're saying that that's Tangaloa arriving to Samoa. So that would be around just before maybe 100 BC or 200 BC after, which is pretty much Tu'itonga period from all indications from the recent studies that are coming out. So comes back to the conversation, there seems to be, if that timing is correct in some of the Tu'itonga timelines, is that at the end of the Tangaloa and the Tu'itonga takes over, that someone goes to Samoa, the Tangaloa to start the Tu'imanua, or shortly after the Tu'itonga? Because that's kind of like what the timeline kind of looks like, right? So if it's 2,700 years ago, so that's 700 BC, about 1,000 years later, that would put it at 300 AD, which is Tu'itonga timeline. Any thoughts or comments on that?
Yeah, no, that is an interesting comment by Refici. He's probably, from what I understood, what he was kind of saying, it sounds like the first people that kind of settled there were Tangaloa, like a new strand. I don't know, because I don't know if it's. I'm just thinking because it's kind of around this, because I believe we're all kind of the same people, kind of thing. But I don't know. I'm not too sure. I'm not too sure what to make of those comments to it, because if it is, then it is just part of the same family kind of thing, right? I don't know.
Let's listen to it one more time,
Okay.
just to kind of see what it's trying to say.
Activating beast
Oh
mode.
yeah,
3, 2.
Malo Paris 2024.
From archaeological accounts in the material that is found, it says that some Samoans, people that settled Samoans, arrived 2,700 years ago in the area of Samoa, Tonga. Fiji was obviously settled before that, and within a 1,000-year, 800 to 1,000-year period, there is also then evidence in biological archaeology of a different strand of DNA genetic makeup arrived in Samoa, and we think currently that second arrival was when the Tangaloa clan arrived in Samoa.
Okay. Okay. Now I really get it listening the second time. So yeah, that is like what you described. If it's 1,000 years, that puts it in the line of like that first, that first three or first four of the Tu'itongas. That's during that timeline. Aho Eitu and those guys, when they were in settling pretty much the central part of Tongatapu. So yeah, that's
Interesting.
way after Tangaloa. So that's more Tu'itonga.
So yeah, that's some interesting, and I guess they're using, like I said, like a new genetic marker, because sometimes you can guess genetic markers when they enter by like how many generations back, and then they can do the years. I watched a video once that does that. We'll play a little bit more and see what else he says. There might be a duplicate with the next video, but we'll see what he continues to.
Stories about the Tangaloa clan arriving in Manua, in the coast of Manua, in a place called Lefanga. That's quite clear in the chants from Manua. And they arrived in Manua the Tangaloa clan, and some of the clan people were builders, tufunga faufale, and they thought to brought the first sacred house called a Faleula to Samoa.
On revient encore dans les...
So basically, around 0 or 300 AD, there his position is the Tangaloa shows up and builds the first Faleula, which is the sacred temple, right? Which
In
is kind of
Manua.
yes, and so it introduces that new concept. Hey, comment here from David. A big difference with Tonga and Samoan mounds is Tongas were used to bury our royal families, but Samoan mounds wasn't. And that's that's the kind of the indicator to me, because they did say earlier in the video, David, that they thought that they would find buried people in there. But they scanned it and didn't find any burials. And one would suggest the reason why is that Tui Tonga gets buried in the Langi in Tonga.
Yeah.
And that this was a residence when he's in Samoa. And so that could be an explainer for it. Hey, God loves you. Malo, welcome.
Malo, God loves you.
Any thoughts on that, Masi?
No, good question, because we all can confirm that Tuitonga did live in Upolu, Savaii, Tutuila, and probably went to Manua multiple times. They're traveling, but like what we mentioned, when they die, when they have the Polo or even the Inasi, it was all done in Tongatapu. So during that time, like I said, it could have been some other activities that we're still trying to find out. And some, of course, people in the local villages in Samoa and in Hamoa are trying to figure out exactly what the purposes are, because no one really knows what they really are, because they're still floating out their ideas, what they were used for. So yeah, no, interesting. And then with his interpretation going off a chance that Tangaloa showed up there, it's probably more like what we mentioned of our practice of the Tangaloa. Is it Tokatufa? Somebody from Manua coming, has a child, shows up there in the name of Manua, because this is the next leader of Manua. Probably, go up there and they kind of signify that as an important event. So yeah, it's interesting. That's just kind of what I can give my opinion on that.
Yeah, here's another comment here. The mounds heaps were used for different purposes. Read Genesis 31:46. They made covenants on the top. That's an interesting thing in one of the, and I don't know if I copied and pasted the discussion he has, but he does have a discussion about the post being vertical and the horizontal post in the
top,
the Faleula, whatever, the Samoan, and then it has the lashings, right? The special type of diamond lashings, and that's a representation of like heaven being connected down to the earth. So that's an interesting observation there. Brown Monk, that's has possibility. Definitely not impossible from our perspective.
Yeah.
Punga for the Tangaloa Langi, the progenitor of Langi Tuaiva. And that house was built by the Tufunga for the Tangaloa Langi, the progenitor of Samoan. And the house was thought to have been thatched in red feathers.
So that's a pretty interesting, right? Because the same thing in Tonga, red feathers were very special.
Signifies high rank. Yeah.
Yeah, and what I don't understand is his comment of Tangaloa being the progenitor of the Samoans, but then he says there's a group that came 3,700 years ago, and then Tangaloa doesn't show up until 1,000 years after that first group. But then he says Tangaloa is the progenitor of Samoa.
Yeah, the Tangaloa.
Let's see. Yeah, let's listen to it one more time, because that didn't make sense to me.
And the house, Fale Ula, the word means Fale house, Ula. Currently, that second arrival was when the Tangaloa clan arrived in Samoa.
Alors, on remonte bien sûr dans l'histoire que les Samoa sont arrivés sur les îles de Samoa.
Looks like he asks a question, so we'll listen to that question.
Faisait partie d'une communauté entre Samoa, Tonga et Fidji. On parle de commerce, on parle d'échange entre ces structures-là. Et qu'il y a 800 ans maintenant, qu'il y avait un nouveau peuple, une nouvelle religion ou croyance, mais on dit que le clan de Tangaloa est arrivé à peu près à 800. Et là, on voit des personnes qui avaient un ADN qui était différent. Hein. Alors, on dit une mixture que nouvel ADN, nouveau peuple arrivé sur les lieux.
I feel like I'm already in Paris
and
now.
On that account, we have a lot of oral history, stories about the Tangaloa clan arriving in Manua, in the coast of Manua, in a place called Lefanga.
Oh, I must have gone
That's
back way
quite clear
further.
in the chants from Manua. And they arrived in Manua, the Tangaloa clan, and some of the clan people were builders, tufunga faufale. And they thought to brought the first sacred house called a Faleula to Samoa.
On revient encore dans l'histoire.
Yeah, I must have gone further than I thought.
Langi Tuaiva. And that house was built by the Tufunga for the Tangaloa Langi, the progenitor of Samoan.
See?
And the house was thought to have been thatched in red feathers.
See, and that's what I don't understand. He just said, you know, that the Tangaloa came 1,000 years after, but then now he says that they're the progenitors
of Samoa.
Yes, and that doesn't quite make sense to me personally.
Okay.
So I don't know. I any thoughts on that, Masi?
No, these star mounts, to be honest, see, I don't know. See, they need to create a word, because you can't call it Purimele for everything, because that worship thing with the post actually in Savai, that seems to have some significant purpose to me, and I can see maybe some keeping some tradition of the old religion in some kind of way. But these little ones that they have throughout, like what they say, Manono, Upolu, maybe all the way up to Manua and Tutuila, they seem like it's either a marker for something or snaring pigeons, like they have in Tongatap or something, because it doesn't seem that it's really that important. That's just me, from what I'm observing, because one little like from the ground level to one little step to go on top doesn't seem makes it that
doesn't seem significant, right?
Yes, that's just me.
Yeah.
That's just me.
No, I that's what surprised me about it when I saw it. I thought it'd be at least like 3 feet, 4 feet off the ground, maybe. But hey, Kingpin, Malo,
Hey,
welcome,
Kingpin?
welcome.
Been a while.
Yes. So let's continue here and see what he says. I'm trying to skip Mr. Paris.
Tufunga, they weren't called a Tufunga then. They were called Satangaloa, meaning that they were sacred to Tangaloa, the people who built the house. And when they finished building the house, they celebrated the house by having an ava ceremony. And in that ava ceremony, the Tufunga were gifted a title, the Tufunga, and the word Tufunga comes from the bag of tools. The bag of tools, the Tufunganga, which held secret knowledge or the secret of making a sacred house.
Any thoughts on that?
Interesting. First time to kind of hear how the word tufunga came. Uh, no, nothing. That's something new. Never. I've
Yeah.
never. I don't have my own opinions on how tufunga actually the origins of where it came from. So thought that was interesting. Something
Well,
new.
and that's what also makes, because they're saying the Ava ceremony was introduced when Tangaloa came, right? Which, from our position, Tangaloa existed on Tonga for thousands of years before the Tuitonga,
Mm-hmm.
and we do take the position that the Tuitonga Tangaloa instituted the Kava ceremony with Aho Etu and his brothers. Seems like somewhat of a similar story going on there, there's later on he talks about a similar thing that reminded me a lot of Aho Etu's story.
Yeah.
Um,
Of the first
but
tuitonga.
yeah, but right now, if this timing is, around the time of the Tuitonga, and that's when the first Kava ceremony was instituted,
That's
I
probably a
don't
tuitonga.
know.
Then not a
That's
tangaloa.
what we're getting to. I mean,
And
that's what
then
I'm thinking.
well, what makes me think about that even more to our most recent episode that we're saying that the Tui Manua clan is during the era of the Tui Tonga. So
Yes.
yeah,
And
I
that's
just thought
that's
that was
the more and more we have these discussions, the
mm,
more I'm starting to think like, dude, there's a legitimate chance that the Tui Manua did not descend directly from Tangaloa. I mean, maybe it was from the Tuitonga himself. I don't know. I'm starting to lean that way a little bit.
They instigated what is called a king, the Tui Manua. And from there was the Tui Tonga, the Tui Fiti, uh, Tui Atua, Tui Ana, other areas of Samoa, including at that time Tonga and Fiji. And the Tufunga, who were the holders of the Tufunganga, the sacred tool bag, they came to Manua and they secretly built a faleula for the Tui Manua.
On le disait bien sûr.
So so that's, well, once again, the timelines don't seem to line up, right? Because
mm,
they're saying, oh, 1,000 years after the first Samoans, Tangaloa comes around,
yeah,
300 to 300 AD to zero. But we're starting to see that the Tuitonga may have been in the BC period from some of the other observations on archaeological sites at the third settlement of the
mm,
Tuitonga. So
mm-hmm,
several Tuitongas after Aho Etu, and they're saying they instituted the Tui system,
yeah,
which, Tui Tonga, the Tui Polotu, whatever, which the Fijians dispute. The Fijians say that Tui is a Fijian word. That's what
mm-hmm,
I'm seeing online in a lot of the comments, that they're saying that the Tui term comes from Fiji. This is why we have to kind of have conversations about this, because people are just running around saying their own stuff. It's like, well, not everybody can be right. We can't say that Tui term comes from Samoa, right? And then the Fijians say no, it comes from Fiji. Like, we gotta at least have some conversations about it. But from my perspective, the timing doesn't seem right. Do you know of, so they make it sound like Tangaloa existed at the same time as the Tuimanua.
that's what it sounds like.
Yes, because now he's saying that the Tufunga built a sacred house for the Tuimanua without the Tangaloa's knowledge, like secretly did it,
Yeah,
right?
I don't.
So
Yeah,
yeah, I'm not sure on how you're going to, so the
mm,
way to hear that is that they existed at the same time.
that's
Which,
interesting.
yeah, you have any hearings or background on that, Masi?
Uh, no, no, because see, and that's the thing. We we believe that it's a title, Tangaloa, it's a title. And then once that title was kind of diminished, it sprung forth the Tui Tonga. So they didn't exist at the same time. And
Yeah,
that's probably like what you mentioned, the timeline seems like it doesn't fit because he's making it sound like the Sa Tangaloa family were in existence at the same time with the Tui Manua being created, but they were still there. And then to me, it doesn't see, and that's the thing, it doesn't make sense because why would the Tui Manua still exist and then have full authority when they sprung up from the person, the Tangaloa that's still being there? That's the
Yes.
funny, and it's either that his definition is probably different, and like I said, they're they're not too sure of how that power balance happened, or if it was balanced between back and forth. But I mean, it makes sense for our perspective that Tangaloa existed to a certain point, was done with, sprung for the Tuitonga. Tuitonga kept going. It created the Tuihatagalawa, but then it changed the responsibility as being more of the old religion keeper. And then the
Hmm.
Tuihatagalawa continue with the normal affairs of kingship of the Polynesian Empire. Tuihatagalawa gets tired, creates with his son, the Tuikanupolu. He joins the Tuitonga of more giving responsibility to the Tuikanupolu and kind of go. See, that makes sense. It
Yeah.
didn't. It doesn't. This one doesn't really. It's not too clear, and I feel like the reason why it's not too clear, the timeline is off, like what he mentions earlier. So
Yeah.
it's too
And
early. Like the dates he's referring to are the timeline of the Tuitonga, but he's talking about Tangaloa. But we know Tangaloa is way before. Tangaloa is way before.
yeah, thousands and thousands of years.
Yeah.
And here's the other thing. I hear a lot from our Samoan brothers that the Tu'imanua was super special, right? But then it also says that the Tangaloa not only instituted the Tu'imanua, but also instituted other Tu'is in Samoa. That's what he said earlier.
Mm.
So what made the Tu'imanua special versus the other Tu'is that were installed? I mean, there's some interesting questions there, but we'll continue with the video here.
Mm.
The Tangaloa Langi, the progenitor, when he discovered that the Tufunga had done this, came to Samoa, destroyed the house, and scattered the men. So Samoa have this tradition where the Tufunga are thought to be their relations. They are the people from heaven, from Langi Tuaiva, and therefore they were considered not Samoans. They were foreigners. And we have a system in Samoa, before you commission a tufunga, there are a whole lot of rituals that allow the tufunga to be looked after and protected by the families who are commissioned the tufunga to build them a house. And after the house was built, there's a ceremony to almost throw the tufunga out of the village or the family.
So the Tufunga secretly build a house for the Tu'imanua. Tangaloa gets angry, comes in, and banishes them. And so, number one, that confirms what we were hearing earlier, that they're saying that Tu'imanua is the same time as Tangaloa.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't sound like Tangaloa is very happy with the Tu'imanua, if this story is correct. See, this is the problem of having only oral history
Yeah.
without any type of ruins or physical
Mm.
markers to tie the oral history to.
Yeah.
Because I've never heard this from other Samoans saying this. They all just say, "Oh, Tu'imanua descends from Tangaloa, and that's the greatest thing on earth." And then Homeboy over here is saying, "No, actually, the Samoan oral history says that Tangaloa
Yeah.
lived the same time as Tu'imanua and was, Tu'imanua was doing secret stuff that Tangaloa didn't like, blah, blah, blah."
Yeah.
Interesting. I
Yeah.
don't know. It's a little bit all
No.
over the place.
No. And this is good. This is a good example Tua, of the weakness of oral history, right?
Hmm.
Because you cannot. It's very messy, and you can't discern on which one is the true one, because there's no archaeological evidence to kind of prove there is that this person do live here. And that's the thing. Then you have certain segments of groups just sharing their own stories, and I think it's it's interesting that a Tangaloa would still coexist with the Tui Manua because yeah, I mean, unless his Tangaloa is just a family that somebody just took the name and just existed, but it can't be the same Tangaloa that is the founder of Polynesia's people and way of life. So I don't know. I find that interesting, Tua. I don't know.
Yeah, because the time number one, the timelines are off, and number
Mm,
two, the only way that you can justify the Tu'imanua living at the same time as Tangaloa is the Tu'imanua is just like another governor
mm,
over an island on behalf of Tangaloa. And that's what it sounds like here, right?
mm,
Assuming it's a Tangaloa, right? That is,
yeah,
if we give them benefit of the doubt and they say, hey, the Tu'imanua comes from Tangaloa, let's say from the Tokatufa,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Let's say he descends from Tangaloa. Like we talked about, this was a common practice where you would have a child with Tangaloa, bring him back to the island you come from, and that becomes a ruler. Let's just concede for argument's sake that becomes the Tu'imanua. That is just the governor of that place, and so it sounds like to me Tangaloa does not live in Samoa according to this story, because what happens is the Tu'imanua does it, builds it with the tufunga that the Tangaloa brought, and then when Tangaloa finds out, he comes to Samoa and rectifies the problem.
Mm,
That tells me two things, or at least from my perspective. Tangaloa is not living in Samoa because he says he comes to Samoa. Number two, that says that the Tu'imanua is not as quote unquote heir of the Tangaloa title itself. And
mm,
so there's some issues with that, like this whole idea that the Manua Empire. Well, sounds like the Tu'imanua was just having a hard time being obedient to Tangaloa and
mm.
doing what he was supposed to do. So how can we say he had an empire? I don't know.
No, interesting. Interesting. Yeah. It's it's hard to make sense and organize what exactly is going on because the time, yeah, like what you said, it's too early. This got to be a lot further back if we're talking about Tangaloa as being the Tangaloa that we all know, the founder
Yeah.
of Polynesia.
So here's another comment here from Brown Monk talking about the sacred bag. Wow, that's interesting. Brings to mind the sacred bag of the ancient Sumerian hieroglyphs. And they also have hieroglyphs in the Americas.
Mm,
That says that as well. They were said to have tech and move and cut big stones. They have a similar carving like that in the Americas as well. I don't know if you've seen it, Masi. It's
no,
like
I haven't.
these bird kind of looking, kind of weird looking things, and they all carry a bag.
Mm,
And they're all carrying a bag, and they have it. Um, uh, they both have it in the Sumerian area and also in the Americas, a similar type carving.
okay.
See, what a bears! We're gonna give you a full bucket, not a cup for you, a full bucket.
Too
Why?
funny. Too funny.
Oh, I still have it on mute. Sorry.
Before the sacred house arrived in Samoa, that the Tangaloa's daughter came to Samoa, married one of the Samoans, and the daughter asked Tangaloa Langi for a house. So Tangaloa sent his tufunga, and in those times, the tufunga would build the house at night,
This is a funny story.
and the house would be built at night, and the family were instructed that when they come to feed the tufunga, they have to make a lot of noise. And when the women at one time to come to feed the tufunga, they didn't make the noise. They wanted to see why it was so secretive, and they witnessed that the men were naked, completely naked, and also they used their teeth to gnaw the trees and the pieces of timber for the house. And when the tufunga saw that they were being looked upon, they fled back to heaven. So there is always this idea of tufunga as as an extra
Foreigner.
person or a person
Yeah, kind of like
foreign to Samoa.
this is very similar to like the Sumerian histories of these, was it Anunnaki or whatever, that they were these foreign celestial beings that brought technology to Earth. So kind of, I don't know, kind of interesting. I don't know. This is one, like we said, this is one of the challenges of oral history. It gets a little funky sometimes. I don't know. Any thoughts, Mussy, while we wait for Mr. France to do his translation?
No, yeah, I mean, yeah, he's starting to lose me a little bit. It's just getting a little in fairy tale land, a little bit like logically, it's not making sense. I mean, of course, because we all hear stories and this and that, and then you try to make sense of it, what actually could happen. But yeah, I don't know. I'm sure these are his stories that he's gathered, and he's just sharing it, and it's interesting. That's all I can say to
Well,
that's
and,
all I
and
can
once
say.
again, this is the thing that I don't know. It's kind of exhausting, and like I don't know if it's exhausting or annoying when we hear all the stories of the Tuipulotu and the Tuimanua, and it's like, where's your evidence? And I'm like, dude, there is more evidence for the Tuitonga than we can think of, especially when we look at what quote unquote evidence is for the
Mm,
Tuimanua and the Tuipulotu. What is it? Oh, some oral history about people chewing on some trees and running around naked at night. Is that what you're
yeah,
telling me is the evidence? Like
yeah.
all it is a list. Look at how easy it is for our brother Vili from Fiji to come up with a Tuipulotu list. You're gonna come and tell me that coming with only oral history and a quote unquote pedigree line, that's the evidence. And then you go to Tonga, and yeah, we have a line, but then we also have that guy lived on this langi and is buried at that langi. Then they stayed here for 3 generations. Then they moved here. Then they moved there. Blah blah blah. Oh, people seeing the Inasi coming from
Mhm.
multiple islands from Polynesia. Even a foreigner who showed up to Tonga happened, Captain Cook happened to witness it with his own eyes. We have drawings of it. We have the studies on the stone. We have the
Correct.
Ha'amonga. We have, forts built by Tongans in Fiji, in throughout Polynesia, and even similar building styles in Easter Island. And these people have the audacity to say, "Where's your evidence?" I'm like, dude.
Mm,
And then when
mm,
I say, "What's your evidence?" Oh, we have 60 Tu'imanuas named, 45. I don't know.
mm.
I'm
No,
kind of
no,
starting to ramble there, but I'm just kind of
yeah,
like,
no,
what in the world?
no. This story, and like I said, this oral story, there, and that's the thing with the oral stories. You're trying to figure it out. We're able. This story reminds me of, remember the story of how Adu and the mother, how he becomes to be how Adu, how he climbs up to meet his
The Toa
father,
tree. Yeah.
going to heaven, climbing to the Thor tree to get to. It's that thing, and we were able to kind of say, okay, that's just a story, but this is what the real definitions are.
Mhm.
Langi is actual location. Toa is where you kind of come up upon the Langi, and that's how we made sense of that, right? This one is getting like, and this is what it is. He's provided an oral story, but I don't know if I don't know if he's able or hasn't figured it out, or maybe somebody else can figure it out to kind of help us understand and break that
What
story
it's
down,
really
because it's
representing.
too
Yeah.
fantasy. It's too fantasy, like every other story we can hear. It hasn't been broken down to actually make
Yes.
sense, and also makes sense, but then there has to be archaeological evidence, because the Langi we know, because Langi is referred to actual location of Tangaloa and where Tuitongas lived, and it's still
Yes.
existence right now.
Today.
So that's why,
Yeah.
yes, and that's why we can make sense of our story, and because it's actually there. So yeah,
Yes.
that's the
And
problem.
and and from what I understand from Te Vitafare is the Tuitonga in Langi, right? In Tapuhia, where Tangaloa lived, there were specific names for different parts of
Hmm.
Langi where Tangaloa lived. when the Tuitonga, when Aho Etu went to Tukutonga, which was
Mhm.
called Tonga at that time,
Mhm.
he duplicated the names. There was a part of the Tuitonga settlement that was called Feretoa. That was the part you enter to come to where the Tuitonga is living. And it duplicated a lot of the quote unquote, let's say, markers of what Tangaloa has, which is comes back to what you said. That's why we can make sense of Aho Etu's story, because it's been duplicated and repeated through the Tuitonga settlements over and over and over again. And when you don't have that physical marker or realization that's tied to an oral story, oral history, it, like you said, you just start getting into weird places, and you don't know
Yeah.
how to tie yourself to reality.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah, comment here by David that the Tonga Empire were the only ones to collect stone tools from all over the Pacific, and the stone tools they found in Samoa were only local, and some
Yeah.
goes to we discussed that on our last podcast, David, 100%, and that's scientific right there. That is pretty hardcore data. Hard to dispute that at that point.
Mm.
All right, let's continue.
Probably the best evidence that we have is a chant that says that Tangaloa Wi, his name, and his mother Wi. So he was the son of Tangaloa and this woman Wi. And Wi was a young girl who was sent to be sacrificed to Tangaloa, the son, or it was considered to be the son. And instead,
And here's another thing. This is how we tie Tangaloa being the sun, right? And being a god.
Mhm.
In Tonga, even to this day, the king is referred to as
The sun.
the sun. And so Tangaloa, the reason why he would be referred to as the sun is because that is the kingly title that he holds. As the Tangaloa, he was the title, the king, the king. And so when Ahoetu inherits or becomes the heir, that
Mm.
transfers over to the Tuitonga because it replaces the Tangaloa title. So now the Tuitonga is referred to as
The sun.
the sun. And then now when the Tuitonga passed it on to the Tupou family or the Tuikanukupolu, they are now referenced as the son of
Sun.
Tonga. And that is a very important part, not only for that political structure, but also for navigation. The equator is referred to as Tangaloa's road because that is the path the sun takes. And so you start to hear these stories and you say, oh, he's from the sun. And then they say, yeah, he's a god because no one can live on the sun. That's not what the reference is. And it's tied to political facts in Tonga and also to navigational knowledge.
Mm.
So those are the data points
Mm.
that ground the story on Tangaloa, and as we see here on Maui, because he's going to have an interesting definition of who Maui is because of this Tangaloa and we lady. So
Interesting. Interesting.
Tangaloa had a child with the young woman, and when the child was old enough, she escaped. And where they escaped from in the chant, it says north of Atafu. That's all we know. And you can make whatever you want north of Atafu. And he arrived and lived in inland in Manua in a place called this place escapes me now, but that's when Tangaloa Wi came down to one part of Manua and discovered there was a man called Pava already living there with his family. And that's where they had the very first, what we consider to be the very first Ava ceremony.
Hmm.
Okay, alors,
any thoughts?
No, see, and it's getting confusing because he's saying it's the first Ava ceremony, but I thought he had a Ava ceremony when they were building the Fareula after. Let's see, and that's that's why I say it's messy, and it's chronologically doesn't make sense.
Well, and
Yeah,
you
I
know
don't know. And yeah.
the theme. This is the theme, and let me hear your thoughts on this, Masi. This is the theme I'm getting. Tangaloa installs the Tu'imanua. Tu'imanua goes and builds a faleula without permission, gets in trouble. Right now, we hear here a Tangaloa has a child with a woman, but she has to run away and hide. And then that becomes the Tangaloa. No, dude. When you're running for your life, you're not the Tangaloa. What I'm getting to is how come everything tied to Samoa is did something without authority, a woman running away with her life, with her child, and then the child becomes Tangaloa? That's not what an heir would do. If that child is the actual quote unquote heir, you're not running for your life.
Yeah.
So what I'm getting to is that there's a lot of, when I hear these stories, they don't sound the stories of inherited from his father became Tangaloa. They did these things in the empire. Then he had a son who took on the name of Tangaloa, blah, blah, blah. That's the empire. I'm hearing a story of a lot of chaos. There's a lot of chaos. You cannot build an empire when there's chaos at home. That's what caused the Tu'itonga Empire to start to fracture and disintegrate, was civil wars back on Tongatapu and Ha'apai and Vava'u. The challenging of power, the fracturing back in the capital led to the fracturing of the whole empire. How is it that I'm hearing every story tied to the Tu'imanua and all these oral stories and the quote-unquote Tangaloas in Samoa? It is of dysfunction and of fracturing of power.
Yeah.
How can you tell me that is the launching pad for an empire? I don't know. That's the pattern I'm starting to see.
No, interesting. And too, I'm while he's speaking, and I'm trying to make sense. I'm really like I'm kind of trying to make sense. I'm thinking the only way to have Tangaloa exist the same time was probably during the time of the Maui, and maybe he's referring to the Maui to the Tufunga. That maybe because I don't know. That's what I'm thinking. Maybe.
No, dude, Masi, it's gonna get weirder for you.
Okay,
Listen to what he says next. Oh.
Ok. Alors, il y avait au début.
Yeah, because I'm thinking it could be the Maui, because the Mauis were very, very skillful. Not only
industrious,
but
yes.
They were kind of like, and I can see Tangaloa, he's saying Tufunga, but I can see Tangaloa maybe asking one of the Mauis to do something or sell something or bring this. I'm trying to make sense, but I don't know because I don't know, because it doesn't make sense with his story to have to coexist during that timeline of Tangaloa.
Well, look at who he's gonna call Maui, and it's tied to that child that we just mentioned.
Okay.
Atafu, nord de Atafu. Alors voilà, il a quitté pour arriver sur Manua. Alors ça, voilà, c'est une interprétation nord de Atafu, arrivé sur Manua. Et quand ils sont arrivés sur Manua, ils ont découvert qu'il y avait déjà une personne qui était sur place qui s'appelait Pava. Et que c'est là qu'ils ont fait la première cérémonie du Hava, avec bien sûr Tangaloa.
So the first Kava ceremony.
Et Pava, arrivé sur Manua.
So Tangaloa was considered quite a trickster. So his name is, some people believe that his name is Tangaloa Maui. Tangaloa, and his name is a combination of Tangaloa and Wi, so Tangaloa Maui. And some people think it is Maui, Tangaloa Maui. So there is some, and he famously had the Kava ceremony with Pava, and Pava's son kept jumping up in front of the men, and he warned Pava for his child to behave himself. And when the child didn't behave, he picked the child up, cut him in two, and then Pava cried, and Tangaloa put the child in the kumete or the tanoa and resurrected the boy. So it's good. And then the Ava now Samoa, we have this symbolically we libate, or we pour a little bit of the kava on the ground in commemoration of this event and also the very first Ava ceremony.
Like you said, it gets confusing.
Yeah,
Tangaloa
that
first comes
is.
1,000 years later. I don't know. This is to me evidence on
Mm,
why you don't want to just be on oral history. It gets
mm.
complicated.
See, and this is the thing too. See, I don't know this guy, Leafiti, but like, in order for me to kind of really give sincere credibility to these stories, because he was pretty good with the, trying to we're trying to understand the Pure Mere, especially the one in Hawaii, can understand that. But then you see now he's going solely on these oral history. I want to understand like what family he's from, where in Samoa, to really try to understand like the origins of Hamoa, Manua kind of thing. Because like I said, the story, it doesn't add up to the stories we know, and he could be just a professor, and these are just chants and stories what he's gathered and putting into understanding. But yeah, see, this is what I'm kind of running into. I would like to just understand which family and kind of exactly where he's from. Is he from the Tafaifa family or the Tuimanua family, to kind of give these stories? Because yeah, it's hard to follow the story because it's a bit
It's
logically
all a bit
doesn't
of
make
it.
sense.
Do you notice the difference when he had a physical landmarker to tie the story to? The story was coherent and we could
Yes.
understand it, and we could
Mm,
say, okay, it's
mm,
based in some level of reality. The
mm,
moment we moved away from a physical marker that's
mm.
associated, then the things get weird,
Yeah.
right? And this is what we're coming back to. This is why when we have these conversations with our brothers and sisters from Fiji, Samoa, and
Yeah.
even Tahiti and all those places, is great. Now tie this to something physically. Any major
Yeah.
empire, right, has physical markers. And when you have
Yes.
the physical markers and they're connected, and even if it's like astronomical knowledge that
Mm.
backs up the oral history and the physical marker, then that's another level, right?
Yes.
Then you look at sophistication of the political system, the social system. You look at all those things, those are layers of evidence that, quote unquote, not a smoking gun, but at some point when you see
Mm.
the trend, you can kind of say, okay, individually, they're not 100% guaranteed. But when you see a lot of the trends, then you can say, you know what, this has some good high level of
Yeah.
confidence to think that way.
Yeah.
So this is, like you said, this is where things get weird. What I'm going to skip to is this one. I believe is when he starts talking about when the Samoan culture or the Ha'amoa culture. I'm going to try to work harder to say Ha'amoa, because I feel like every time we say Samoa, we're giving credence to some of the definitions of the word
Mm.
Samoa.
Mm.
But the Ha'amoa culture starts moving and abandoning some of the Sias and what that means. And we'll start with that.
To abandon the Tia around between 500 to 300 years ago. We have no idea why they abandoned the living and building inland in these big mounds. And then what became very prevalent are the house form which have the pai platform, which are very low, no more than 2 meters high or a lot less.
Alors, on voit bien sûr cette
About 500 years ago, is that about the timeline where the Tuitonga gets challenged in Samoa? And
Mhm.
then all of a sudden, the large mound that had a house on top that
Gets neglected.
gets neglected because the Tuitonga is no longer there. And so what happens? These smaller platforms get built,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
And so that's what I'm saying. The more when you start tying it to physical features, then all of a sudden
Yes.
things make a little more sense.
Yes.
Now we can
It's
make sense
easier to
of,
follow. Yeah.
yes, Now he's starting to talk about um, things that somewhat make sense, and we can follow along on the explanation, and we can say, okay, around this time this
Mm-hmm.
happened to these physical structures where the big large mounds were not being used anymore, and then all of a sudden at the end of using the big large mound, these smaller mounds start coming together. And so
Mm.
he's going to talk a little bit more about that, and we'll get into that. But before we go to that one, Masi, any thoughts?
No, no, that makes sense because I can see why the Pulimere in Ha'amoa, especially in Savai, was probably during the time reign of the Tuitonga. Like reign, what I mean, because the Tuitonga was still, he still came back after that little, skirmish that happened, but he still came back, but he wasn't a ruthless uh, ruler in Savai and Upolu. But that made sense when he left. He left, and that became a time where smaller groups of the family created their own authority and power, which is the Matai system that is currently being practiced now. And they go to smaller from the Pule Malay. See, and that's the thing. Then it goes from Pule Malay, and they're calling it Star Mounts. I don't know if there's another name, but they're just using Pule Malay to cover all of it. When I think it could have been a different purpose, but
And that's what he's going to get to. Actually, he's going to
mhm,
start talking about, when you have a massive structure like that, especially out of stone,
mhm,
that screams consolidated power, right? There's one guy who's at the top of the mountain, and he
correct.
wants everybody to know. At the end of using that, all of a sudden, smaller platforms that are all over the place, and he kind of gets into it a little bit of what political structure starts to show up at the same time as these smaller platforms start
Mhm,
appearing in Samoa.
Obviously, a village structures which are very different than the more uh, centralized structure around the
See?
Tia.
mhm.
And they're involved with the idea, what I would suggest to be it became more devolved power, and the Matai system became more prevalent. Matai system were like a communal system of
Mhm.
Mm,
leadership.
mm. Alors,
Mm.
Pretty
Mm.
straightforward. I mean, it's
Yeah,
starting to make sense, right? Tuitonga,
yeah.
consolidated power. When he gets rejected, the Matai system, which is a more distributed power system, which fits into what we've said multiple episodes back, right?
Mhm.
Samoa as a unified quote unquote nation, same thing with Fiji and other places, did not really exist. That we don't have a lot of history of a unified quote unquote Samoa. It was more distributed power. Same thing with Hawaii. It wasn't until Kamehameha the Great he unifies Hawaii. Our position is sounds like the Tuitonga, who was the head of the Polynesian Empire. Once his power decreases and the empire falls apart,
Mm.
then this distributed system of power starts to get established, including the Matai system. And we say it has a lot of backing because it's tied to a physical structure that shows up after the large mounts. Now
Mm.
everything makes sense. When you
Yeah,
tie it to physical ruins, all of a sudden the story makes
sense.
sense. Any thoughts on that, Mussy?
No, no, just along the same lines as you, Tua. Smaller structures. I think that it resembles as a leader for a particular family that they've been appointed, and this is where the Tuikan Polo was famous for, the election. They were
Mm-hmm.
elected, they were elevated to this mound that they've created, and see, it makes sense with that big mound. That's why I said if they do the timeline, it goes back during the time of the Tuitonga residing in Ha'amoa, in Upolu and Savai. That that could have been a location that he would reside at or visit or do something, but it seems to
That's the
fit his
palace.
purpose. Yes, that seems to fit his purpose that that was built for to elevate him, and then he gives the explanation why, and that makes sense why that only mound is the biggest, the Purumere, while the other Yes, there's hundreds of them, but they're scattered and they're very small. Can be in one Manono, can be in all over Polo, Tutuila, Manua. So yeah, I mean that's interesting. It's pretty straightforward. And see now it's kind of like he got my attention in the beginning. Then we were kind of like in fairyland a little bit. Now it's come back to like okay, this makes sense. We have some like what you said, some ruin, some physical structure to kind of go along. And this is why we don't dispute all of oral history. Then it kind of oral history kind of gives it meaning, gives it
Mhm.
purpose, fills in the gaps of what they were used for. But
Yeah, but until you tie it with a physical aspect, it's very difficult to narrow down. There's some interesting comments we'll bring up here. Longo Longo or Rongo Rongo, I'm assuming that's like a Tahitian or Maori scripts, are the only Polynesian hieroglyphs. Hey, Toahola, give some more context on that. Where is that found? These hieroglyphs that you're kind of referencing here. Another comment here. Oh, that's we already went through that one. Clyde Moore, there's a big chance that we all live amongst ruins of an ancient culture. The Tangaloas and the Maoris could have been the tail end. I lean towards this a little bit, Clyde Moore, and my thinking behind that is to be as sophisticated as Maui and Tangaloa are, and we're gonna go a little bit into, and I might bring up the Furitaunga here because he's gonna start talking about the Kava ceremony here in a little bit. But I believe at some point the Polynesian Empire had written language, and I would believe the ones who probably had it were Tangaloa and Maui.
Maui.
Because that's the only way you can, number one, accumulate and maintain that kind of knowledge. And once you lose the writing, then you lose the engineering, then you lose a lot of the technology, right? Because you're just relying on oral history. Maybe something happened, like we can see inklings of the past by looking at the future and see what's duplicated. Like we mentioned before, something happened or was going on, had to have been going on when you look at why the Tangaloa line transitioned to the Tuitonga line. And the best thing we can look at is what led from the transition of the Tuitonga line to the constitutional monarchy of the Tupou family or the Tuikanukupolu now. There was a significant change in the environment, a significant change in power structure, significant change in religion, significant change in everything, that in order to adapt to the new environment, the Tuitonga line was created. Whatever that is or was, I don't know, but I definitely lean very heavily. Any thoughts on Clyde Moore's comment, Masi?
That could be correct because it seems like a lot of the building and mass moving of structure happened during the Tangaloa and Maui's time. You know, of moving things. It could possibly be, and then maybe see, and that's the thing. That knowledge was probably instead of maybe if it wasn't passed over to many generations through the transition of the Tuitonga and to the other lines because it started because every transition everything started fading the knowledge, and then when that was fading, more chaos happened, and that's why the empire really shrunk to pretty much to Fiji and Samoa, and then even shrunk to even to Tonga to now. So yeah, no, it's interesting. It's interesting. We don't know why. We don't know why, and that is interesting.
Not 100%. And here, Clyde, more additional comment. The Tongans or the Southerners would have been the only ones to maintain. And that's why we believe Tonga, another piece of evidence, right? Out of the many layers of evidence that Tonga was the center of the empire, because at the root is where the longest lasting structure you would expect it to be, right? If you get further on the branches, when the tree dies, the branches and everything is the first thing to wither away, the leaves, then the branches. The root is the last part that would die. And if there's any chance of survival, it would come out through the root. And that's something that I believe is what Tonga is, something that Tongans alone should not just be proud of. It should be all Polynesians, because that is the remaining part of our quote unquote country our history, our culture, that every Polynesian should be proud about. Here's an
Yeah.
interesting. Before we move on, any thoughts on that?
No, no, and I think you're right because we are one people, and like they say, when Polynesia should be happy that a, 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 a physical structure and that what we were able to maintain at Tonga being independent is a win for everybody.
Mhm.
So because if Tonga was gonna collapse too, who would know what the meanings of these ruins would have been? Because I'm sure if Tonga was colonized like a lot of the islands, I'm sure a lot of that knowledge would have been lost of knowing what the purpose of the langis that are still there, even to the sun being the Ha'amonga being a sun gate. So yeah, I mean it's a like what you said, the root. It's really remarkable what Tonga had to deal with to survive. So
Here's hey, Water Bears is thinking very deep today. I think he's trying to make sure he maintains his visa to
mm,
attend the Kava sessions. Did the Tower Babel language confuse affect the early Polynesians too? I don't know. A lot of
I
people
don't know.
say that Polynesia was the last place to be settled, but it could have been waves of people. I don't, maybe
Mm.
not. I don't know. Any thoughts on that, Mussy?
No, 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 no thoughts. I'm not too sure.
10-4. Rapa Nui, aka Easter Island, is also where the Ahu. Yeah, he corrects it here.
Mm.
Tongariki, or Tongan chief stone statues are found. That one gentleman that went to Easter Island and videoed himself talked about. He's like, dude, I went to Tonga, saw the langis in Tonga. I'm looking at some of these ahus that are kind of
Moy eyes.
multi-tiered. Yeah, had
Yeah,
the moais on them. He says like this looks exactly like the stuff he saw in Tonga. So
mm,
could be Toa.
mm.
Any comments there, Masi?
No, I mean there's a strong possibility that that is the same kind of people that were in Tonga, because the structure of what Tonga has with the Ha'amonga and the Langis, they were doing the same thing in Rapa Nui. But to me, the question I have is why in Rapa Nui they were doing the faces only over there
Mm.
in Rapa Nui. So that's interesting. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, that
But I
is
don't know.
interesting.
I'm just thinking maybe they're doing the faces because it was close to Waihi. I don't know. Maybe these are the first people. I don't know. First people to come, and maybe just trying to remember the first people to come to the Polynesia from Waihi, and they were just doing their face structure. I don't know, but
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't know. I'm not too familiar with this. Clydemore asteroid hit southern end of New Zealand, where affected seasons and created El Nino. And this was in 1200. Funny that the Tuitonga Empire grew at that time. Could be maybe that change. We're of the position that the Tuitonga may have started possibly even BC, Clydemore. But if we're
mm,
saying that at the height, it seemed like the height of the Tuitonga at its peak. Not sure if maybe that asteroid changed the weather and people suffered, and then the Tuitonga was able to claim further power. Not sure. Um, just wondering if there's a coincidence of the hieroglyphs is called Longo Longo in a place in Kolomotua. Possibly. Sometimes
mm,
these names are connected.
yeah.
Hey, Ro Niwa, welcome.
Oh, new one. Hey, Tua, but isn't there evidence of those written form language that was found in Ha'apai or somewhere?
Yeah, they found some hieroglyphs that are seem to be like the early starts of like the related to the Hawaiian triangular hieroglyphics
Yeah.
in Hawaii that they found in Ha'apai. Um, could be related, could be something similar, or maybe a Hawaiian that was brought over,
Mm,
remembering Hawaii while they were here. The Tuitonga brings them to Tonga, and
mm,
that
mm,
dude or gal is just trying to remember their homeland.
mm.
Just thought about that. No, good
Interesting.
point right here. Clydemore scarcity creates conflict and famine. That's
Mm,
really what it sounds like. I've heard some stories about how Pharaoh came into power, and
mm.
really it was in the time of Joseph
Oh.
because of the famine of the 7 years after the 7 years of plenty.
Mm,
Egypt was the only place that had food, that all the surrounding areas, quote unquote, kingdoms, had to give up everything to Egypt, and Egypt got all its wealth and its power during the 7 year
Ah,
famine. And some people say that that's how the Pharaoh came into power. Malo,
mm,
malo, toa. We'll go on here to the next video. He's going to start talking about the Kava ceremony.
interesting.
I'm going to play it and then pause it, Masi, and then if you could give some feedback, and I'm going to bring up the Vita Fales because I think this is a huge, huge differentiator,
Mm,
right? When you look at the structure of the Samoan Kava ceremony, and then you connect it to the Tuitongas, it is not on the same level of sophistication, is what
okay.
I'm
Okay.
gonna get into. So what he's saying is he first earlier he covers about the post in the middle of the
Correct.
house, and then the fale is built all around it, right? And at the center, at the very top, is the lashing that
Mm-hmm.
connects the sky to the bottom. And they said even, and I didn't know this, I don't know if you knew this, Masi, or not, but apparently in that because it's the Tau Olunga is at
Mm,
the top and the Tau something Lalo, I think, or whatever at the bottom, that they would bury people under that post sometimes.
really?
That's what he says earlier in the video. Oh shoot, I'm
Okay.
not even showing the right one. My bad.
Oh no, I thought you were starting. Sorry, if you could go, yeah, because I thought you were gonna bring it up, but I didn't know you already start playing it.
Yeah, my bad. Let me
No,
see if
you're
I
good.
can
You're good.
just refresh the video here because it's time marked.
Okay.
And what this house looks like, you have the central post in the middle,
Mm-hmm.
and then the on the left it faces the Malay. That's where you enter from, the guests enter from. And then at the back is where the ava is served from, and where the family sit, serving the guests. And then the most high-ranked people sit the top and the bottom. So when you enter, it's to the right and to the left.
Alors voilà une configuration de
So that's what he's describing as the structure of the kava ceremony. So kind of give
Mm,
some thoughts on that, Mussy, while I pull up the the Tongan
okay.
the Tongan
I just have a quick question. So
Tuitongas.
what? So the middle is the post.
Yes,
Is that what it is? And that's a post
yes.
of like what? Like a post on
That's
a
the
pole? Like a
primary post. Yes, that's the primary pole of the structure of the fale. And that
okay.
is basically the what you call weight bearing or structural piece
Mm,
that holds up the entire file. And then it has a so it has that's the vertical piece, then it has a horizontal piece, and then there's that lashing, and that's the
yeah.
primary frame of the house is built off of that structural framing. And he's
Okay.
expressing here that that's what the Kava circle in Samoa is based out of. So the front is the Malai, that would
And
be
that's
kind
where
of like that
people.
open space. That's where the
Yeah.
guests
Oh,
come in
guest comes in, and then the top chiefs like,
on
and
the
these are
north and the south.
all right. I wonder, does he give an explanation of like what's considered top? Because usually, usually you kind of have a certain top of like ali'i kind of thing. Because like, or is there multiple ali'is with different villages? That's the thing. That's interesting. I would ask. Because if it's like what you get a like a Maria Toa and like somebody of a Tamasese, like the Tuya Tua title holder, like because they're both significant. Who would be higher
The
than the
higher
other?
ranking. Yeah.
Yeah, see, that would be my question on that because he has two Matai Ali'i. I can see this working for like villages who there's multiple Ali'i title holders. That makes sense. So you can put two. But yeah, that's kind of my question regarding this. Like, because what happens if you get like the Marietoa and like Tamasese Tuya Tua, which are the the one of the bigger ones. I mean, there's the other ones. The what is it? The Mataafa and
Mm. Is there
there's the
like
other one, the Tui
there's
Maria
no
Fano.
official ranking amongst those Masi? How do they determine who is who when it comes to these things?
Um, see, I just know by. I think they've all decided. I know the recent one, who's the head of state now, that Maria Fano. He's the
Hmm.
more recent one out of the other three. Mataafa, he's more well known, kind of in their area in the back of Upolu. They're kind of like in that Adepata kind of area. Um, but the Tuya Tua, which is the Tamasese one, I know they have some kind of direct connection to Salamasina, from my understanding, and that's why they're kind of elevated because Salamasina is known as the only
Unifier, right?
unifier of Samoa, and Marietoa is really high too because that was a title created from the Tuitonga, from his, pretty much from his mouth. So
Yeah.
that gives it significance. So that's why I put those two as the higher ones. The other two, I think they're just more from influence or work, kind of like the Tui Polu Tua.
Yeah, do
It's created, but
administrative stuff.
yes, and he gained influence by the work he was doing, and I feel like those two come from there. Of course, they have ties to the old, but the other two are pretty significant, from my understanding. And I'm just thinking, how would this thing work if, let's just say, Maria Toa, which is obviously the paramount, like the highest, if you're doing it in his kind of region, right? But
Hmm.
what's gonna happen if you get all four in one of the Kava? See, that's the thing I would. Those are the questions I would ask. Kind
Yeah,
of thing. If there's only
it,
two spots
it's
for two
it sounds
Matayali.
to me it's not a very clear and established hierarchy, right?
Mm,
So because it is so distributed, it's communal. That's why it gets a little messy. Because even in Tongan, basically in Tongan structure, it's pretty straightforward for the most part,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Where the rankings are. This is why it was in a way complicated between Tupo the first and Laufiri Tonga, because there's a difference between political and military power and
mm,
religious power. And religious power is very difficult because religious power can quickly turn into military and political power,
correct.
but it's not always easy for military and political power when there is a pre-existing religious authority. You would have to
Mm,
get rid of the religious authority, but in getting rid of the religious authority, you risk uprising amongst your people, right?
yeah,
And that's what made the relationship between Tupou the First and Laufiri Tonga pretty complicated, right? Because
yes,
Tupou the First was building a new government, a new system through a new religion,
yeah,
right? And the Tui Tonga was not having the same influence in the new religion as the old. Um,
yes.
so yeah, so it sounds like it's a little bit more complicated. But what I wanted to walk through is, so basically the Kava ceremony in Samoa is based off of basically the structure of a house, right? And that's
Yeah.
that's what it's driven by, according to this guy. Granted, there may be other people who have different interpretations, but it's driven off of the marae, the community space, the
Mm,
marae. That's where people are coming in, and then you would have the highest ranking chiefs on the north side and the south side. Um, okay, pretty straightforward. All other chiefs sit here, but the two main ranks seems to be sitting here. Um, so this is interesting. When you come to the Furitaunga, and we'll start here with the Tuitonga,
mm,
it is much more sophisticated in how it is structured, right? So the Furitaunga, the most powerful person sits across
Correct.
from the Tanoa, not on the north side or the south side, sits directly across. And why is this significant? This is why the supreme leader is referred to as
The sun.
the sun, because that is a direct representation of the equator.
Mm.
And that's where the head sits, right? And that's what, and it's called the Olovaha, and obviously the Tano. Then you have multiple, it's not just the top and the bottom, but it's tied to the cardinal directions. These are other specific locations and roles for specific people. And you, as in the Samoan one, you enter and come through what would be considered in the Tong and Kava circle the sacred space, where you don't. There's
Yeah.
roads that the entry points are from here,
Mm.
right? You don't come and interfere in the sacred space over
Mm.
here if you're coming in and out.
Mm.
So this is once again, so this is the Tuitonga's Kava, right? Was called the Furitaunga when the last Tuitonga installed Tupo the first is Taumafa Kava. It is very similar, except the Farefa reversed the structure.
Yeah. And
And
looks like added the Toa Eki too, because there's no Toa Eki in the
yeah,
Furitaunga.
that's true. That's interesting. And I'm wondering if it's because the Toas, and I mean the shifting of power, political
Correct.
power, but traditional
Yes.
power,
Traditional.
yes,
Yes.
maybe in other areas than what the Tuitonga. Because when the Tuitonga is there, no one should have Eiki or anything, because he is the
Yes.
supreme in there.
Correct.
So interesting. I never saw that
Yeah.
before.
And that's where the bloodlines of the Tungi, which is the Tuihatagalaua, bloodlines of Kalanivalu that traces back to the Tuitonga, they sit there, and that's why that changes to the Toaeki with a different name, just so that
Mm.
it can be applied, properly and edit, with good tongue and etiquette, because
Yeah,
you're not outranking the current modern king of the Tui Kangpong.
interesting. And then we'll come back to the right. So we see here, right, the equator. We see it's not just the middle to the north and middle to the south. There's also four positions of significance, as well, and the corners. We'll call it the corners of the circle, even though there's not really a corner. I just say corner because you can draw a square out
Hmm.
of these 4 points. Now, that has a lot of significant astronomical knowledge. So number one, this is, east to west, the movement of the sun in direction. We also have the equinoxes, dates, the cardinal directions, right? And this is the same etching that you'll find on the top of the Ha'amonga, that you
Hmm.
will find this double V structure throughout the Americas, and you will even find this double V structure in Egypt, right? So we're looking at a
Mm.
very sophisticated Kava
Yeah.
ceremony here, and it represents multiple things. So it also represents the northern hemisphere, the southern hemisphere, and the equator. It also represents the two tropics,
Mm.
right? And then we're looking, when we start looking at these things, and we should probably have one of the videos we'll have with Tevita Fale is to walk through this. This
Mm.
also represents, when you look at the design of the Karia, the double outrigger canoe, and this
Mm.
is the water that goes underneath between the two outriggers is called the Olovaha. That's
Mm.
where where is that term Olovaha that I saw right there at the top,
Mm.
right? Because that's
Yeah.
the center where the water goes underneath the double outrigger canoe. You seem like you had a comment, Masi.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say that if any of our viewers, that understands the Samoan structure of the kavabo that we have here, because yeah, those are the questions I would have. How would that function for like a whole national, let's just say national of
Kava ceremony.
Kava ceremony. How would that look like? With because if there is four supreme title holders, or they don't do that and they just do it by region, so that it makes sense why they do it that way. But yeah, that's all. If anyone knows, because
To answer that question. Yeah.
yeah.
And then also a last thing here is this also is a representation with the boat in conjunction with
Mm,
the Tangaloa, the Haamonga in the sky that runs across the equator.
mm,
Right? So I mean, the reason why we're having and showing this is really to kind of, when we say we need the evidence, well it's sophistication, it's the depth of the knowledge of the heavens, and that knowledge is duplicated in a physical, quote unquote, cultural
mm,
action and
mm,
structure. And that is why we make the claim that it just seems to make more sense of the Tuitonga being from the greater empire, and that Tangaloa comes from Tonga, and the Tuitonga inherited
mm.
that the title from the Tangaloa because it's a continuation of this knowledge, this sophisticated structure. Any thoughts? Any additional comments, Mas?
Nope, nope. Agree. Just those questions with because granted, I'm not too sure with the Samoan structure of their Kava ceremony, because I can see it functioning properly when you're doing it by a village, right? You can have two elite. There's kind of multiple elite title holders, and then the lower chiefs kind of have their spot around. But I'm just trying to understand what happens if you get like you know Marietoa and Tamasese, Tuyatua title holders, where specifically, and to me, if it makes there's got to be significant reasons too, unless it doesn't matter if they sit on that side or on the on the north side or the south side of the lead. There's got to be, I don't know, maybe a
An
information that,
explanation. Yeah,
yes, there's got to be a reason, unless it doesn't matter. But
one would
but yeah,
assume it would, right?
yeah, but yeah,
Okay.
that's all. Just those would be my questions.
All right. I think this might be the last bookmarked.
Okay.
The image is the how the house is built around, almost as if the architecture is a diagram for the social relations of people that sit and make the space an important.
Alors, il disait que l'architecture de
Interesting.
So he's just kind of once again re-emphasizing that the Kava ceremony is a representation or duplication of this faleula, or that temple, or the major
Yeah.
house structure in Samoa.
Yeah, no, and just to go back to it, when you talked about the double V, isn't there a double V also on the Kumetea Maui, which is a certain build
Yes.
Kumete. So yeah, just to kind of just go back and just mention how that's an important significance, because it's not only in our astronomical evidence, but also in our cover, the Tanoa, the Kumete, Maui, which
Yes.
is which is which is tied named after Maui, because Maui is the most skillful navigator in Polynesia, and has to have his Kumete with the double V that's on top of the Ha'amonga. But yeah, I just thought I would just share that. But yeah, no, that house structure, that is interesting. The Fare Samoa, or Fare Tele. Interesting, because I'm just trying to think what happened. Like, is that ceremony only? Like I said, I'm just repeating myself, but is that? I'm just trying to figure out how would it work if you have all four of the top 5 title holders,
Yeah.
where they sit, because you only have two. There's the other two. Are they gonna sit with the lower chiefs? To me, that sounds like another funny story that will come out that will create chaos. But yeah, that would be my question. Because yeah, and it only, and if it doesn't, it only kind of strengthens our argument that Samoa was never really one nation kind of thing. You can only do things in certain regions to function properly
Yeah,
because they all have their own rules.
10-4. Right. Well, I'll give my closing thoughts, Masi, and then you can close us out
Yeah.
for the day. Um, you know, was great to walk through this. This is probably the most comprehensive discussion I've ever had on the Samoan mounds and into the details of the Tuimanua and the Tangaloa oral history. Um, and it was good. I mean, every like we experienced when it's tied to a physical structure or ruin, you can tell that the story makes sense. It flows, and then when it's purely oral history, things just go all over the place. And so that's one of the reasons why I know some of our especially on TikTok, it's a little bit on YouTube, but especially on TikTok, they always kind of say, why do you need ruins for? You don't need ruins to prove that there was an empire. And I'm like, well, this is a prime example tonight as to why ruins are significant.
Yeah.
When you don't have physical markers to tie the story to, it becomes tedious, and you're like, man, no wonder why the Palangis thought we were just savages and chewed and made lala stuff up and chewed coconuts. But really, really appreciate the our ancestors. They did do some fantastic things. I think we just gotta sieve and sort out the crazy stories,
Mm,
or at least the ones that we can't tie directly to something that can ground the story. But really appreciate that. Rainwater, thank you for the love. Javier, welcome, Malo Bito.
no.
You're catching us on the tail end, Javier. But I really appreciate it. I just want to reemphasize, enjoy learning more. We enjoy having conversations. We want to invite people to have the conversations. And let's throw the ideas on the table and watch them wrestle with each other and
Yeah.
see, you decide which one you think won, and you can make your own decisions and choices based off of what data and stuff you see. Any additional thoughts, Mas?
No, thank you, Tua, for this episode. Enjoyed it. Thank you to the viewers for participating. Always a great interaction with you all. Hopefully, this is helpful to talk about our ancestors. We're just trying to have this discussion talking about the Tuimanua. We're all one people. We're just trying to understand where did we come from and where did the empire start from and headquartered. And once we get that, we can have all the same understanding of Polynesian history. Because right now, we're still trying to figure that out. And no, just enjoy. We're all learning, and also just like what I mentioned earlier, if anyone with knowledge of the Samoan structure of the Ava, we would appreciate, or even their view of the Tui Manua, of why this is the headquartered empire that kind of sprung out to the rest of Polynesia. We're open to that. I don't think we've gotten anybody yet, Tua,
No.
so far, but it's just a discussion. It's don't feel some type of way that we're trying to look down or talk down or the other ones. We're just trying to understand the truth. This is our position. It's been it's we feel very confident about it, and we try to break it down to make it um, easy to understand. And yeah, but thank you everyone for watching and enjoying this Polynesian Eyes podcast for this episode. Until the next time.
Sweet. Stay curious, ask the hard questions, and until next time, malo.
Mahalo. See ya.